Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Late Night Table Talk. My name's Eric Yurko, and as always, pretty consistently, hopefully that's not going to change, I'll be your host, and it's about midnight in Lagos, so we should probably get started. Joining me tonight is going to be Danni Loe, Marketing Manager at Pandasaurus Games. But before we get a chance to talk with her, there are, as always, a few things that I'd love to chat with you about. As always, I'm just super grateful for y'all watching this. I know that it's a bit of a slog, in the sense that these are typically hour and a half long videos, somewhere in that range at least. But thanks for watching. We're still getting through this first season, and then we're gonna, as always, reevaluate and see what we end up doing. But it's been a blast to film these. It's been a blast hearing some of your feedback, and I look forward to having more people on the show. If there are people you'd like to see on the show, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll see what I can get whipped up. So if you all remember from last month, I had Omari on, and before that I actually skipped the monologue because post-move I didn't really have anything to talk about by myself. But I know that many of you were left adrift by the lack of a long-form monologue on this show, and you'll be pleased to know that I finally figured out what to talk about, and the monologue is back. Hold your applause, I guess. I mean, if you want to applaud at your computer, that's between you, your computer, and anyone else in the building with you, but live your best life. So, one thing that I've been thinking about a little bit, just in terms of where we're at in the year, is I've been doing a little bit of work for the American Tabletop Awards, and we're still sort of ramping that up for a launch later. And that got me thinking, essentially, not just about the games that I've really enjoyed playing in the last year, but a lot of the games that I have been looking forward to playing in the last year and hadn't got a chance to. So I figured, why not talk about them here? I've got some time, and it seems like it might be a good start. So there are some games that are a little bit less current that I've been looking forward to playing that I haven't necessarily gotten a chance to. One of them, I think you can see it. Ooh, I'm going to mess this up, but nope. Wait, I really did think it was over there, but that's my left from right problem. No, Cryptid, right around here, from Osprey. I've been wanting to play it for a very long time, and got a copy in recently, looking forward to trying it, and I keep forgetting that it is a 3 to 5 player game. I have brought it out for 2 players at least twice and been like, oh yeah, we're going to play Cryptid, open it up and been like, this 3-player game. So once I can really internalize the player count there, I think we'll be able to get it to the table and it's going to be a blast. But currently I haven't had the most luck with 3-player games, or more players than that since, ongoing pandemic. So we'll have to see what we can get with that later. Other titles that I've been looking forward to. So it's a little bit out of shot, but Too Many Bones I've been really excited about, but I haven't had a chance to really dig into it. It's the kind of thing, it's kind of like Gloomhaven, where I want to be able to give it the time and space that I think it deserves, and I just haven't had that yet. But I am looking forward to it, and I'll have a full report for y'all once I've actually had a chance to play it to its utmost. On the more recent side, there have been a few games that I've been really excited about that I haven't gotten a chance to try yet, but I'm hoping to soon. One of them should be, I'm now looking through the shot to see where it is. I think it's, again, obscured by a shoulder this time. But, so Mondo just pushed out what seems to be a spiritual successor to the Heartthrob series, Dream Crush. And I'm very excited to try that. If you've seen any of Crystal's work on Board Game Blitz, she's a huge fan of Heartthrob, and I got exposed to it via hanging out with her at various conventions. It's a blast as long as you, tweak a few things. But it looks like Dream Crush is going to be a very similar game in the same vein, and so looking forward to getting a chance to try that out once I get a chance to, get more people and play for it. The big one for me, of course, is, and I actually have it here this time, but I've been really looking forward to trying the Burgle Bros sequel. So, for instance, just to give you all a sense of it, looks like Fowers was not content with just having a normally weird-shaped box, as per usual, but this time it actually physically opens up. Let's see if I can do it like this. Yeah, so normal box, clips like this. Full box actually opens up all the way to reveal just a ton of content. But you all know that I'm a big fan of the Burgle Bros series. Pretty much, it was one of the first games I really kickstarted, because I was like, a heist game? A cooperative heist game? My gosh, say no more, I'm sold, etc. And so, let's not to get hyped about. I'm very much excited about it, and I'll have more to say about it as I get a chance to play it. I'm hoping by the time this video actually launches I've been able to play it, but I, film these things a little bit in advance of when I actually premiere them. But that's neither here nor there. Two more from just this area, fairly recent, but a little bit on the heavier side physically. So I've been really excited about Title Blades. Like I said, we're still working on getting it played, but I find the art really interesting, the theme really interesting as well, and that's pretty much how I decide to play games these days. Is just do the art and the theme really grab me, and looking forward to seeing if the gameplay is up to my expectations with the art and theme. And the last one actually just arrived a couple days ago, but Bezier sent me Maglev Metro. Yeah, you got most of the angles correct on that. It is, again, physically heavy, but I'm interested in the theme, particularly just because transit games are fun. I'm not a big train game person in, like, practice, but the idea of train games is really appealing to me. So I end up playing games that are train game-esque, like Metro X, or Let's Make a Bus Route, or hopefully Maglev Metro. I think I just like public transit as a conceit for games. But like I said, I haven't really figured out one way or another what I'm doing on that. Other titles, just from looking at shelves, I mean, Fossilis, kids table board games, looks like it's going to be a lot of fun, and I do like paleontology-themed games and just like fossil-themed games in general. Zombie Teens Evolution from Scorpion Masque. I've been having this weird thing where like Scorpion Masque has not missed yet for me. Like, and this is uncommon with publishers, right? You play a bunch of games from the same publisher, and generally speaking, you have at least one game that you're like, well, this wasn't really up my alley. So far, that hasn't really happened for Scorpion Masque, and that puts them in a very like nice category of a few publishers that more often than not have not missed, and I'm pretty excited about Zombie Teens Evolution as a result. I mean, I've tried, what of theirs? Decrypto, quite enjoyed it. Stay Cool, quite enjoyed it. Masterword, quite enjoyed it, although don't tell anyone, I don't think the review for that is live yet. Flash 8, quite enjoyed it, and so I'm thinking, even at worst case scenario, 4 out of 5 ain't bad, but I'm pretty sure that I'm going to enjoy Zombie Teens, because I tried Zombie Kids as well and thought it was a blast. A little, small in scope, because I'm not the target audience there, but I still had a lot of fun with it. But yeah, no, mostly just been spending this week powering through some reviews and trying to get more of those done to just tell you all what we've been playing, what we've been enjoying. Are there any games that you all have been looking forward to that you haven't gotten a chance to hit the table with yet? If so, leave them in the comments. Let's talk about it. Looking forward to hearing more about them. But yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. Still hoping to get a lot of these games played, especially a bunch of the non-US titles as well. So some of the Dojin games that I've ordered a big box of them in June or July of last year and haven't quite gotten a chance to get them to the table yet. But it'll happen. So let's bring on our guest tonight, Danni Loe. Danni's been the marketing manager at Pandasaurus Games for a while now, but before that she's been wearing various hats in the industry, and you'll see that happen a lot on the show just because I find that I tend to overlap a lot more with people who have done various things in the industry over the course of the few years that I've been active, and as a result I find that they often have really neat insights on the different overlaps and intersections of different levels of industry work. But the weird thing is, despite that, I think Danni and I have only ever actually played one game with each other. I think that was the Dino Island Roar and Write when that whole Kickstarter was running. But Danni is an excellent ambassador for the hobby, an absolute delight to work with, and as always, I find these intros are best served by having the person themselves talk rather than listening to me talk about them. So without further ado, please welcome Danni Loe to Late Night Table Talk. Hey Danni, thanks so much for joining me. How's it going?
Hey Eric, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, excited to have you on. So what's been new? What's up?
Um, Personally, not much. Just been
Yeah,
at home, working
yeah,
from home,
yeah.
eating at home.
Yep, that's been me as well. I've been really fortunate that I have this like that pepperoni roll recipe that we've talked about because like it is just a
Yeah.
very good quick lunch. I can like run downstairs, get one out of the freezer, and just kind of cycle that. My housemates really like them, so now we make double batches of like 32 rolls, and it's like a whole day affair.
Yeah, you have like a mountain
Yeah,
of pepperoni rolls, and it
yeah,
makes me a little envious.
yeah. It's a
A lot,
monument of
a
sin.
lot envious.
Well, have you been cooking anything particularly good, or going through like any favorite recipes, or just kind of?
Um, Actually, Tea from Hava gifted me with their favorite Instant Pot Indian cookbook.
Oh yeah,
So Yes, I mean, I've experimented with one recipe so far, but it was a huge success. Very easy and very tasty. It was a cauliflower potato curry that
Oh,
I added
nice.
chicken to. Yes.
I made an Instant Pot brownie, which like I'm very skeptical of desserts in the Instant Pot just as like a lifestyle choice.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But I this one was like when it actually came out of the Instant Pot, it was pretty much like a highly viscous liquid. It was essentially almost a fudge,
Okay.
but like you could like scoop it with a spoon, but it was still like kind of like liquid, mostly cooked brownie. And so it was like the perfect complement to like ice cream and this
Yes.
like brownie. I don't want to call it an ooze because that makes it sound less good than it was. It was extremely delicious, but it had a lot of qualities of an ooze, if that makes sense.
A
This is a
tasty ooze.
lot
Yeah.
less
Yeah.
appetizing than it was.
I
Just like
believe you.
yeah, every time I tell someone that they're like an ooze, and I'm like yeah,
A viscous.
like a viscous brownie sludge, and they're like, are you? And I was
Making it
like,
better.
so I'm in board game talk, not food talk. That's why I just don't. This is why we don't do the food channels.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So, question I always ask here that I hate being asked for a variety of structural reasons. So, this is my show. I can ask it. So, what's Danny playing?
This Danny?
Yes,
Or okay. Because there's quite a few actually.
there are.
Um,
Just talking with someone
um,
today about how many like Daniels there were in the board game industry alone. So I assume if you upgrade that to just like a Dan or Danny, then it actually even expands the large scope.
yeah, I can't. I being in the same conversation as Danny Quatch, very
Mhm.
confusing.
I bet.
Uh, I always assume people are talking to him as the superior Danny, but
Is there
what
like a
I've been,
council of Dannies? Like,
I think there's a council of Dans. I think that is a thing. But since the pandemic, we haven't been able to meet. Um, I personally don't like Zoom, so I just
is that what
go.
the gathering I keep hearing about is? A gathering of Dans?
A secret. Um, I've been playing a lot of Sleeping Gods every weekend.
Oh, I really want
I
to play
guess.
that.
Um, I finished my partner. I finished our first campaign,
Mhm.
so we played 3 weekends in a row,
Okay.
and I think it was like 6 or 8 hours total.
Ooh.
Um, I played near and far. Loved it. Loved the exploring and storybook parts. Like, don't really care about the rest of it. It's just a means to the story.
Mhm.
And Sleeping Gods is all story, but with a
Okay.
really cool and satisfying combat.
Ooh, that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah,
Yes.
I liked Near and Far a lot, but I definitely had this thing where it was like I would end up playing with people who hadn't played it that often, and so like the mechanical parts of the game, I'm over here just dropping tents left and right. And it seemed like a nice iteration from like Above and Below, where Above and Below I was like, oh no, I just want to always explore. And they're like, but if you keep exploring, you will lose. And I was like, maybe under your definition, but I will have the most caves.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So it seems like that's like a nice natural progression. So am I appropriately hyped for Sleeping Gods? I think is my question.
Yes. Yes. So you have a map that you write on and like write little notes and cross off things when you visit them. I think we explored a quarter of the map in our eight
Ooh.
hours. So I was a little bit apprehensive about playing the same game over and over, but there's so much of the storybook that we haven't discovered. There's 13 different endings, so we've
Ooh.
experienced one of them, and there are even reasons to go back to locations you visited in a previous game to get experience, to get whatever the reward is. But yeah, it all incentivizes the exploring, which is my jam.
Oh, that's
I
great.
think you will love it.
That I'm very excited that yeah, there's a bunch of games that are like so my one of my housemates is very into cooperative games, so I tend to save the co-ops for when I can play with her. And so like we've got like Gloomhaven queued up, Too Many Bones queued up, Sleeping Gods queued up, and there's a few others. I had other ones. Oh, Zombie Teens Evolution,
Mm,
Burgle Bros 2. Like I'm actually very hyped for like at some point this will all happen, but we've been so much of our time has been spent unpacking and moving that like our weekends are
right.
mostly us decompressing because it's just like we have built many shelves.
No, I don't blame you. Moving
Uh,
sucks.
yeah, it truly does. Like, I was fortunate enough that, I guess fortunate is the wrong word. Maybe it's the right word because I paid someone to do all my packing for me. But
Wow.
that was
Swanky.
that was worth it, honestly. Like, one, I actually need to go give them 5 stars on Yelp because they did not bust anything. Like, yep,
Impressive.
they didn't bust anything. I found all 4 of the feet for my Wii Fit balance board. Like, eventually I found them. It took me a little while because they were just in different places, but like they didn't lose anything either. And I have a lot
Nice.
of respect for that. So like, yeah, it was
Yeah,
perfect,
yeah,
perfect
yeah.
moving service. Yeah. But yeah, no, getting all of this moved was like a whole kettle of fish. That's an
Yeah,
expression we still use.
that was a process. That was multiple streams and attempts at streams.
Uh, yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot that my computer is beleaguered. I think is probably the word I would use for it. It just can't do things like Twitch or Tabletop Simulator.
Oh,
Right, which is
yeah.
unfortunately the only 2 things I really need it to do.
Right. Yeah.
It does Discord okay, but everything else is kind of a mess. But yeah, what else has been new? Anything new on the Pandasaurus side?
Um, well, yes. I'm trying to think of things I can talk about because I'm working in October
Oh yeah,
already.
yeah, yeah. No, that's one
And
of the reasons I never talk about my work is because I don't know what's like public. I just never keep track of what's public, and so I'm always just like, oh, well, we provide goods and services, and they're like, yeah, like what? And I was like, I do not know how many things I can say. And they're like, it's hard to keep
um
track.
yeah. So we just announced. Oh my God. Okay. Okay. So I know what I can talk about, and that is we had 4 weeks of back to back to back to back announcements of
Right.
new games and Gen Con, spring, and just so many things. So, and then delayed releases. So I have to keep talking about these things for another month, which really threw me off.
I was gonna say,
Uh,
oh no, talking about a game you like for another month.
I do. Okay, so this game, Umbrevia, you will be getting your copy soon as it leaves LA. It is so close to you, but we have to make sure it gets to Indiana before we can send your copy back to California.
Right.
um, yeah, Umbrevia. That is now our April release, and this is an amazing game. I adore this game, which is very surprising because the mixture of mechanics are things I typically do not enjoy playing.
Right. I'm
So,
awful at bidding games, and so I'm always just like, but I like how this one has a nice like it has a limited scope to the bidding, right? So like
yeah,
being where you're bidding on tiles, I really Jonathan Liu taught it to me, and so he and I were just sort of going back and forth on it for a little while. But yeah, I like that the bidding is limited because otherwise I get stressed. Like modern art stresses me out.
oh, I'm awful.
I'm terrible at it. I'm like cash.
And then
Not,
you don't have any, and then you lose, and it's sad.
yeah.
Um, but no, Umbrevia, I really enjoy the bidding because everyone's drawing the same, and there's some variation, like whether it's a soul flower or energy
Right.
flower, so with one or two. But it's just three, and you have four options to bid on, and then you do it again, and that's it. And I love those limitations.
Yeah, I find that constraint in the like constraint inspires creativity, right? But like also constraint can occasionally turn really stressful, unbounded things into very much like, oh, okay, that's fine.
Maybe it's because I'm an anxious person, but I like knowing what to expect from everyone.
Oh no, no, I think that's almost certainly as another anxious person, I'm like, no, that kind of makes sense, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
no surprises.
But that's not to say that, because then there's the area control
Right,
aspect too. And that still has really tense moments and surprises, but there's limited options. Like,
right,
if we're fighting over this curve piece, it can go in very limited places. So
right. Yeah, and
that's good too.
that's where Jonathan and I got into it. Is some of the times we'd be like, okay, I'm gonna place this, and it's just going to clown your entire path structure. And I'm like, goodbye, Jonathan. I think we tied. We
It
were,
happened.
yeah, it does. You know. Jonathan, I think, he's pretty good at stuff. So I was just like, I think what happened was I was like, yes, I can either play this tile, which I think if I played it a different way, I could have won or tied. And I was like, but if the options are win or tie, I'll pick tie because then we both win. And I was
Oh.
like, that's fine. I'm very easy to play Cosmic Encounter with because everyone knows what I want. It's just like, hey, if we're both gonna win, I'm into it. It solves a lot of problems. It makes you really easy to work with in a bunch of games because if people know that you are 100% pro ties, then they will just like generally be like, hey, you want to team up? And I'm like, absolutely.
It's not a bad strategy.
No, it works. I tie a lot. Neat. Now the game has 2 winners.
Yeah, even better.
We actually, I was playing a game of Welcome to a few years back, and we did successfully tie. Like we did not have the same board, but we perfectly tied. Like we actually we pinged like Blue Cocker on Twitter to be like, hey, we have the same score, and we have gotten through the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth tiebreaker. Do we just tie? And they're like, yeah. And we're like, oh, neat. Fun. Yeah.
I was going to ask if you'd ever been in a situation where you had to go to the additional tiebreaker. That's wild.
I have a secret house rule that a lot of people are probably not going to like, but my house rule is if you can't remember the tiebreaker, then both players win. Like if you have to look in the rule book for the tiebreaker, you can use it next time, but you can never retroactively apply a tiebreaker that not everyone knew about. Because
I like
that changes your gameplay, right? Like you're like, oh, if it's the most coins, I might have taken a different option that would have left me with more coins, and then we wouldn't have tied. I would have won the tiebreaker. And so I'm just like, nah. 1, they're just games. 2, if you can't remember what the tiebreaker is, then you weren't using it to strategize. And so I'm just happy saying
then it's meaningless. Yeah.
You both get.
I'm gonna propose this as our new house rule, and I feel like I would win a lot more games because so many games come down to player order as the tiebreaker, which I understand balance wise, like it's a solid decision, but I almost never go first. I would rather spend my turn getting more resources or doing something than just like taking first player.
I almost always go first because generally speaking, I'm again like, I don't know if this game prioritizes first player or not. So in lieu of us not knowing, I'm just going to go first, and we're just going to be like, meh, we'll see how it shakes out. Some games penalize first player, some games don't. What was the game I was playing? Oh, I was playing a game called Showdown Tactics. It was from Korea Board Games, where like going first was kind of not great. Because basically, did you ever play those like kitschy 90s plastic games that had like the plastic and they had a speaker inside and you'd like turn on and be like brum, 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 and have, like the noisiest games in existence. Yeah, so this is that for the modern age, which I love. So basically everyone's got tiles from 1 to 9 and they've got little NFC chips inside of them. So I take a tile and I'm the attacker. I put a tile face down on the board. The game knows what number it is. You take a tile, you're the defender. You put it face down on the board. The game knows what number it is. It tells you which player wins, and then you put the tiles face down on the leftmost side of the board. And so you play 9 rounds with your dwindling tile set, and I don't know what numbers you're playing. I only know that I've played a number and you have beaten me or not.
Sure. Okay, yeah.
It's pure tactics. It's just mind games.
Huh.
And so the game's board is like I love that kind of thing because it very much penalizes you going first because I'm like, okay, I'm going to go first, and then you can choose whether you want to try to win or throw this one. And I don't know what to pick. It's very fun, though.
That reminds me a little bit of Lockup. That one's bidding, it feels like, but in a similar, like, you can choose to play face down or face up, and you have your workers, or whatever they're called, 1 to 5. So you get some information, then you reveal at the end of the round and see who's won. That's interesting, though.
Yeah, my favorite of this kind of genre is it's a smaller game company, but have you heard of Cake Duel? It's basically a like 2-player. It's basically if 2-player coup were viable.
Okay.
Because I think two-player queue's got a lot of mechanical problems, just because it's like there's differing amounts of actual available information, et cetera, et cetera. But like basically you've got attackers that are like either fighters or archers or wizards. And so fighters and archers can be blocked by defenders, wizards can be blocked by scientists, because the scientists disprove the wizard's magic.
Mm.
And like, which is a bummer, but like they're all little sheep that are like cartoon sheep. So it's like a cartoon sheep wearing a wizard hat, another one's just wearing like a tinfoil hat. But what you do is you have your hand of 4 cards and you can play some number of them face down, and you just say what they are. And your opponent can do the same with their defense cards. And so I may be lying, you might be lying, but
Right.
but you can call the other person a lie, and then they reveal. If they are lying, they just lose the round. You take all the cards, you shuffle, and you go again. If they aren't lying, then you lose the round. There's a high penalty to calling someone's bluff, but it's a very like fun and quick 2-player bluffing game, especially as you start adding in their like special cards like the assassin, or like there's a card that can copy whatever card you just claimed.
Oh.
Or there's a card that becomes a copy of a card in your opponent's hand. There's like a bunch of different like I am fortunate that I'm not sure if they actually ended up putting it in the rules, but there's a like Eric corollary that has been added to like their official rules, which is you're not allowed to claim a card that doesn't exist. Because you're like, at that point, you are just playing a mind game. You're like, oh yeah, this is the fugitive. He does 1 damage, and they're like, oh, I haven't heard of the fugitive. Yeah, he's new. And like one of the people who made it like looking over at me, and I'm like, what? And they're like, they can just check their cards. So I was like, that card's been misprinted. And they're like, you can't. They're like, you can't just. I'm like, I just wanted to see if it would work.
Rude.
Yeah, so you're apparently not allowed to claim cards that aren't real. Fine.
I'm not surprised about that, actually.
Fine. Everyone's a cop. Me.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Take me to jail, I guess. But
before we started this show, I did say I wouldn't report you, so I guess that still stands.
I appreciate it. That game is super fun though. It's very much just like if you want to just like go back and forth on bluffing, because at some point you have to lie in order to like play a card. Like you just don't have a game state based on all your like weird complex past interactions. Where I'm like someone will be like, oh, this is a soldier, and I'm like, okay, so just so you were keeping track, that's the 8th soldier that someone claimed to have played. There are 5 in the game.
Yeah.
And so you call them, and they're like, oh, this one actually is a soldier. And you're like, ugh, I've been bamboozled. Been taken for a ride up Liar's Creek. Or whatever they say. I don't know what the kids are saying these days. That's probably a phrase. I think that's a popular phrase to the youths.
It's very popular.
Yeah, probably.
Now that I think about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So tell me about Brew, though. I've not yet got a chance to play it, but I've been intrigued.
It's very cute. It's so freaking cute. Though I saw it is surprisingly cruel. So it's a very neat concept because you're using dice as your workers, but you're also using them for area control. The worker placement spots are super limited, as are the placements in the forest. And you can manipulate your own dice, and you can manipulate other players, including going on top of them, so they essentially no longer exist for control. And you can freaking burn the forest down.
A classic strategy. Just you being like, am I a Captain Planet villain? Yeah.
Yeah. The theme though, you would think that the secret ingredient is love, but no, it's actually fire.
They're like, you'll never I think it was like some comic that I read online once, so they're like, you'll never defeat us. We've got all of our powers combined. It's like friendship, love, hope, and everyone's like incredible violence. And it's like, what? Yeah, so it's friendship, love, hope, and cleansing fire.
That's Brew in a nutshell. Nailed it. But no, this is our June release. So we announced it during Gen Con, right before Gen Con, so we could run demos. And most of the games were full. It was super exciting to see, especially because this is by Stevo, who is one of my coworkers. He's our head of graphic design at Pandasaurus, which is probably why it looks extra good, because he has poured his heart and soul into this game. But
that's good, though.
yeah. Like the rulebook, I don't enjoy reading rulebooks. It is not my idea of fun. But this one was quite enjoyable to read, just very pleasing to the eye.
The joke I always tell people is that one of my best friends was our rulebook guy for like all of college and post-college, and like when we were living together after college. Then he went and got married, and so I'm sitting there at the altar with him, the best man at his wedding. The priest is like, does anyone have any reason why these two should not get together? And I'm just thinking in my brain while I'm like holding the rings. I'm like, I'm gonna have to read all those rule books now, aren't I? And it speaks to my determination as a person. I just was like, damn.
What an inconvenience.
Yeah, I was just like, buddy, why'd you have to go and fall in love? Me shaking fist. Rule number 1 is never fall in love. It's probably, I think that's probably true. Who knows? Board games.
True. Anyway, so yeah, Brew's on Tabletopia and Tabletop Simulator. So we should play sometime.
Yeah, we should. Good. I also just enjoy our Tabletop Simulator games where I just spend time when it's not my turn, it's your turn, just slowly inflating the size of your pieces.
It was better with dinosaurs. You can only do that with I guess the fire tokens now.
Oh man, I've done it for a bunch of games with other people where you just like adjust the size of one of their cards, and so now their cards aren't all the same size. And so
No.
It's diabolical, but just no, it's very fun to just like I think we did it. I was playing Creature Comforts, the Kids Table board games one, and so I just I think I was playing with Nicole, maybe Hoye, and I just changed the size of all of her like workers to be different, so just none of them were
that.
Oh, super. It's like it's just very minor stuff. You're just like scale up 1, scale down 2, make this one normal, and then just make this one huge.
Yeah.
Just like Rita Repulsa, you're like, just make my workers grow. It's probably right.
Yes.
I've seen Power Rangers, maybe. Yep.
I know far too much about Power Rangers from my previous employ.
That makes sense. Yeah, I was never allowed to watch them. My mom had some very specific rules about what I was and wasn't allowed to watch. So like, James Bond movies, perfectly fine. Friends, no. And I'm like, why is that? Unclear.
I wasn't allowed to watch Rugrats for whatever reason.
Rugrats was one of those odd cartoons, though, where they did slide in a bunch of stuff under the radar. Not as many as like Rocko's Modern Life, but a lot.
Know that.
No,
okay, yeah. I wasn't allowed to watch Rocko either.
Oh no, yeah. If you weren't allowed to watch Rugrats, you were definitely not allowed to watch Rocko's Modern Life. Like I've gone back and like seen bits online about it. I'm like, oh.
Interesting. Eye-opening.
Yeah, me just loudly like, sir, this is a Wendy's. But
you didn't have to go that hard, Rocko.
Yeah, Jesus. No, like the like classic family story is that my mother would not let my sister watch Titanic until she had taken our 3 VHS collection, which like dates me something terrible, but whatever. Our 3 VHS collection of Titanic, and she re-recorded them onto new VHSs, but edited out, I think, 2 scenes in particular, and I will let you just guess which 2 scenes they are. You already know the answer.
I know the answer because I stole our 3 VHS tape to watch them over and over again.
And so, like,
I am very familiar.
I've never actually fully watched Titanic because I'm just like, no, I get it. I already kind of know how this goes down, right?
There's
like,
a car.
1, I'm culturally aware. 2, I guess you can just draw whoever you want. 3, I may not know a ton about Titanic, but I do know the ship goes down. Spoiler alert for a movie that came out forever.
For a real life event.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Spoiler for the year 19, 19? I don't remember. Boats. I just remember I wasn't allowed to have a PlayStation because there were too many violent video games available for those consoles. So my mother let me have an N64, and I'd apparently just never heard of Turok, Perfect Dark, GoldenEye 007, or any of those things, and I just never brought it up. I was like, there's a weird inconsistency here, but it is actually advantageous for me to not mention it right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although she never let me get GoldenEye, so I had to go play GoldenEye at a friend's house.
That's what friends are for. Violence.
just tying it back around to Brew again.
Yeah.
Me just goes on Twitter. Just Twitter poll everyone. What are friends for? Friendship, love, violence.
There's only one right answer.
Sees the official Pandasaurus Twitter has just voted violence like 6 times. Like, I didn't even know you could vote more than once on Twitter.
I edit the tagline on our website. Brew, game of dice and violence.
I mean, if you're gonna go for it, you might as well go for it, right? Like, Gospel Dinosaurs, similarly about violence, but more of what's the first one for? Like an ordained violence. Like, no one watches a David Attenborough video and is like, those animals are violent. They're just like, his voice is very calming.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I monitor our social media and reviews and stuff, and so like when people post about their game days on Instagram, there are people with children playing God's Love Dinosaurs, and they're like, yeah, my 6-year-old didn't really want to eat any of the animals, so we ran out of bunnies, but it's okay. I just used extra frogs.
Oh man, no, that's 100% what 6-year-old me would have been like. I could imagine like me, age like 6 or 8, in tears because I don't want my dinosaur to eat any of the frogs that I've become friends with. I'm just like I'm like, no, I emotionally really understand that.
Yeah, no, I was like, well, buddy, like, yeah, you do you. You don't have to eat them. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. All right. Well, speaking of games, we should move on to our next segment, which is I've been loosely calling it Game the Name. I'm running out of times that I could say I've been loosely calling it that because this is like our 12th episode or something, and at some point I'm going to have to be like, that's just what it's called. Like I keep saying, oh, I'm going to workshop it, and eventually it'll be better, but I don't think that's going to happen. So
that's fine.
With the same energy of making peace with the decision, let's figure out how this game is going to go. So basically, I'm going to come up with a name, and we're going to collaboratively build a game around it. I have not thought about it yet. On some episodes I have. Okay. Some episodes I've actually like thought about it a bit. Other times I just like look around and I'm like, tripod, and like terrible. But I'll get in the zone about it. So let's see here. Okay, there's not very much in my room that inspires me. Let's see here, because my brain's like file cabinet. I'm like, Eric, please, you're recording.
I am.
Okay, I got it. Name of the game is going to be Two Candles.
Two Candles. Okay. So my brain immediately takes that and is like, this is a game involving toucans, the birds.
Okay.
Who may or may not be dull. So maybe it's a word game.
So it's boring birds.
Yeah. Okay. But maybe it's also candles.
They could be both. They could be some. They could be like. So it could be like a Dale of Merchants sort of thing, where like after the fall of humanity, these toucans have like taken over a Yankee Candle business, and now you're just like trying to help them sell the candles that they've always believed in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so mechanically, talk me through that. Is it because there's the fact that there's 2 candles makes me think it might be a 2-player game, but I'm amenable to higher player counts.
If it's higher player counts, I think it needs to be teams.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely like 2 opposing groups, whether that is 2 people or teams.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense to me so far. Mechanically, what are you feeling here?
not dice.
Okay.
I think dice are maybe too chaotic for this.
Right. It needs to be dull.
It's dull.
Me channeling my inner Eurogamer. Shot across the bow. Oh man, I'm gonna get yelled at for that. I don't know
It's
when.
fine.
It'll happen.
All I can think of right now is us discussing previously that this was going to be really good or really bad, and I have no confidence in myself right now.
Oh no, you're gonna crush it. The dream here is that it's something that we build together. So how could it be bad? That's how I
Okay,
always feel about it.
true. Two powerhouse names on this box.
Right, exactly. Okay.
When this episode airs, we're gonna get a publisher deal.
Probably. Three publishers are going to come to us and be like, we want to sign your game, and I will just be like, no, you fight. Which is a real thing.
The real game begins.
Yeah, exactly. The game's already started. Okay, so then mechanically, yeah.
So maybe it's a card game, and I'm thinking the toucans, they with their candles. So toucan beaks are striped. I think I'm not making that up. So there's some candles that have the different wax layers. So I'm thinking maybe it's a card game, and you have to make.
My candle down here is actually different wax layers. It's since kind of regressed a little bit. I burnt off a lot of the candle. I like candles.
So yeah, maybe you're tableau building, kind of making different types of candles that you're then selling. I'm not sure where the dole comes in, except that's maybe that's the name of their store. Where they're selling these candles.
Yeah, I like that though. I like the idea of you're filling in aesthetically pleasing layers that are both so you gotta work. I would say let's think about it from two angles, right? You've got complementary colors, so it's a pleasing candle shape color gradient, and you've also got complementary scents.
Yes.
Because I like the idea of games where you can create something terrible for humorous reasons. So you could essentially have a candle that people come in and they'll be like, I want a candle that I can show in my house that has a specific color set. And so customers come in looking for candles of certain colors. Now, what you might be able to do is they might have scent preferences as well, but you can occasionally ignore them to just get them out the door. So you're like, yeah, this candle's, red, blue, and brown. And they're like, wow, what a beautiful gradient. And you're like, yep, I'm not going to tell them it's apple, ocean, and chocolate. It's not going to smell good when you burn it. It's going to smell like a nightmare, but...
I love this, actually. And because it's apparently post-apocalyptic, which is why we have toucan salespeople. Right. They've had to forage for their supplies, so there could be just god-awful ingredients, but it's the color they need. So some candles can be purely decorative, and you have to assess the customer's needs, how they're going to use the candle. So you can sneak in the garbage, the mossy green garbage scent, and fulfill their order.
Right, and some candles just smell really good, but the coloring is just kind of so-so. You're like, yeah, it's a pale white, or it's kind of brownish, or oh, we ran out of dye, but this is a wild scent that's just so perfect, but it doesn't really have any good color associated with it. And so someone's like, nah, I'm just going to burn that sucker as soon as I get home.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool, because then you've got the nice, you essentially got an ongoing wax market that they're fighting over to go forage for supplies. And so you can bring it back, you can melt it down, and then you can start layering the candles up. So as people come in, they're like, oh, I want this thing. And you're like, okay. What we do have is we have this color candle. And they're like, no, I really want a pink candle. And you're like, okay, but what about a purple grape scented candle? You're like, actually better yet, a grape flavored candle. Don't you mean scented? And you're like, no, I do not.
So now the more that I think about it, I think this could be a 2 to 4 player endeavor. Does not need to be co-op. In fact, I think you're trying to fulfill the most orders. And you get money based on how many qualities of the customer's request you fulfill. So they're looking for XYZ color, you fulfill 2 of those, you get X amount of money. And it could be, I think the candles need to be card placement, tableau building, so you could see the layers and whatnot, but the rest of it could be worker placement, where you go to gather whatever material and where you go to refine your candle.
Right. And maybe there's some events or like weather that changes what you can find. It's like, oh man, we found this whole like human settlement, and unfortunately, it was just full of meat. All of our candles are meat scented for the next round. And you're like,
Ew.
that's
Cool.
deeply upsetting. And they're like, yep. You're like, I got like, or have things that could be both unpleasant scents and also unpleasant colors. So you're like, you wanted a salmon candle? Yeah, salmon colored. And then you're looking at this candle which is salmon scented, and you're like, well, so that's our bad. I like that.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of emergent narratives in games where you're just like, no one wants that. I think that's good though. So you you basically worker place to like bounce your workers around. The like toucan doll is kind of like it's a fun little pun that's just like the tagline is like toucan doll, definitely not, because the exciting world of candle making. Yeah,
that could work. Yeah,
I think we got it. Yeah, I like this a lot just because I like the like multi-market incentive there of just like trying to go for different levels of customer orders. I think there's probably some like, I don't know anything about game design, so there's probably some balancing you got to do around like how much you get for fulfilling 1, 2, or 3 of the customer's requests.
Sure.
But I also really like the idea that, so this is just me pitching, but like graphically, all of the birds have hats. So that they come in, you could tell what they need the candle for, because they've got like, because all I want is I want to see a picture of like a really artsy toucan wearing like a top hat or just like a very like pleasant bonnet or something as they're like coming in to buy candles.
Yeah. You know what? I think of this world that we built, it's very Kipo-ish.
Yeah. Oh, it's extremely very that. Like there were people at one point, but now there's just a bunch of birds with hats.
Who need candles.
Right, and they want to appear fancy, and the only thing that they have is that they're just like, candles are about the fanciest you can get. They crave luxury. Yeah, no, that's all scans. Yeah, so yeah, no, like I said, it never ends bad. We always come up with something. I think this is pretty good. So yeah, if you're a publisher out there and you're like, where can I find my bird hat candle making worker placement card game? Oh yeah, you heard it here first. We're accepting all offers. Yep, just several more zeros on the end. Just
Yeah, just blank check. That's fine.
Blank check. Yeah, I don't know anything about manufacturing.
I know a tiny bit. It's fine.
I'm over here just like no thoughts, head empty.
Smooth brain.
Yeah, that's me most days. All right, well, yeah, that's 2 candles. So we'll maybe you'll see that at some point when it's #1 Spiel the Jahres game, there.
Top of the BGG hotness for the whole year.
Yep, everyone likes it. They're like, wow, this game I loved so much that I yelled Gloomhaven is garbage and abandoning my family to become a bird with a hat myself. And it's just a bunch of reaction videos, people throwing their games out because this is the only game they want now. That seems likely.
Yeah, I'm crying. I'm so full of emotion at our future.
Yeah. Wow, what a bold future. Oh man. No, I keep getting I get the occasional bit of flack because when I was sorting my shelves, I wanted to make sure I didn't put too many games on there. So my copy of Gloomhaven is like up out of frame, and people are like, at some point you're going to try and pull it off the shelf and die. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, is that what you want? And I'm like, yeah.
Mine is down, and I feel like I'm going to break my back when I get it, but we also still have stuff.
Oh, yeah. Mine is on a shelf. Just it's Gloomhaven, Edge of Darkness, all of Fireball Island, and I'm just sort of like at one point I'm just gonna be like, oh, it's gonna shift, things are gonna slow down. We're like, I'm ready, Gloomhaven.
It was worth it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wanted. I was admiring your glass because I was like, I have the same cup, and I was like, oh yeah, because it's a BGG Con glass.
The last BGG Con that I went to. I'm always scared to bring those home because I have to wrap it in my suitcase and like 10 t-shirts.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, I just take a bunch of my like dirty t-shirts and dirty clothes and just like wrap it extremely tightly and just force it into like the middle of my dirty clothes like
Mhm.
that. And
Yeah.
so it usually ends up fine. So that's been okay.
I've never had it not end up fine, but it was always a concern.
Right. I'm always worried about the one time I open up my bag, it's just full of glass. I'm like,
Ugh.
yep, super
Yep.
fun. Oh,
I did that with wine too, and I'm glad it didn't end poorly.
oh my gosh, yeah, that would be stressful.
Mm.
This always happens to me with Gen Con. I always am like traveling back with a suitcase full of games, and I know 1 to 3 games are going to just get ruined. And it's never clear which ones it's going to be. I cannot do anything to prevent or to like shunt or to like increase the likelihood of some games over others. It's just some dice are going to be rolled somewhere, and about 3 games are going to just be like dented severely.
You just gotta roll with it.
Circle of life, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to our Q&A. So I've got a few fun questions for you. And so we'll start off with a bit of background information. So some of our viewers are just getting to know you for the first time. So how did you get into the board game industry? What was your emotional journey?
Ooh, my emotional journey.
Or physical.
Both. My human experience.
Yeah, exactly.
I started in the industry when I was still in college. I was in my very last quarter of getting my French and education degree because I was going to be a high school French teacher. I started working at, I needed a second job. I worked at the zoo, and the zoo did not pay me enough to pay rent, so I needed a second job. So I went on my university's Craigslist equivalent, and I found board game customer service. And I was like, oh, I love board games. I'm nice. That could work.
So I'm just imagining, like, in the mirror, I'm nice. Like, hype yourself up.
I'd already worked at a board game store, so I thought this was a similar thing. Like, oh, customer service, sales clerk, same. It was for Yellow, the publisher of King of Tokyo and other games. So I'd actually met the person interviewing me while I worked at my game store. So I was like, oh, cool. I started work the next day after that interview. And then the plan was for me to go to grad school to get my master's in education to be a high school French teacher. But for various reasons, that didn't happen. It didn't happen for 2 years. So then I was like, okay, I guess I'll just do this forever. And by that time, I had acquired myriad other skills. So I was in charge of the website and organized play and translation and then marketing and then sales. I did a lot, and I learned a lot at Yellow, for which I'm very grateful. And then I went to Renegade, Clank, Lanterns, a whole bunch of great games. Power Rangers.
My mildly diseased brain was just like Clanterns. And like my brain was like Clank, Lanterns, Clanters, and I was like, it's just like had that moment. What is wrong with you, dude?
It's like the TikTok. Do you ever look at someone and wonder what is going on inside their brain?
Yeah, it's that exact thing, but instead of the guy from the Big Enough video just screaming while superimposed on a mountain, it's me just nodding, going, Lanterns.
Beautiful. Anyway, so I was doing marketing for Renegade, and then went to Gamma, which is the board game nonprofit who does Origins Game Fair. Actually, I don't remember. Did I meet you at Renegade, or was it at Yellow?
I think it might have been very lightly or loosely at Yellow, but I think Renegade was where we really first started like having our like back and forth.
Yeah.
Because I remember the Yellow times as being murkier enough in the distance.
Yeah.
But also time has become such a flat circle for me that I'm like, no, I've known Danny for 200 years.
Yeah, my whole life.
Yeah, I've been alive for 500 years. I've known Danny for 200 of them. Is what it feels like.
Yeah. Anyway, so after Gamma, I was doing marketing for them, but it was very different than being a marketing person for a publisher, because you can talk about games, but not in the same way. It's like you're excited about all games all the time, and just the act of playing games is what you want to be hype about. Whereas as a publisher, you're like, specifically this game, you need to love this game right now for these reasons. It's just very different, and I enjoy being a publisher more. So I last year left Gamma, and now I'm at Pandasaurus doing marketing.
Excellent. So so I'm assuming that the French teacher potential outcome is part of how you got into doing work on the translation side?
Yeah, so I got my degree in French and lived in France for a year. Don't speak. Yeah, I lived in Bordeaux, which is southwest wine country. Very beautiful, one of my favorite cities in the world. But I don't speak French as well as I did 7 years ago, but I still read it, and I write it and all that, and I understand it when people talk to me. Just speaking to me, I forget every word I've ever learned. And
that's actually why my Spanish vocabulary is terrible, because every time someone would like speak to me in Spanish, I would just be like, they must be talking to somebody else, and they'd just be making eye contact with me, but my brain would just shut down. I had what was it? I had this horrible thing where, like, if I didn't think you were talking to me, just in general, I tend to tune people out. If I'm like, oh, that's a conversation for somebody else, it would be rude if I listened in. And so this particularly was an issue, because I remember having tuned out an entire conversation and then hearing the next bit, which was the worst possible thing you could hear after you've tuned out a conversation, which is, now that you've heard the conversation between these two people, you're going to be answering some questions for your exam base. And I was like, oh no. I tuned out the whole thing. My brain was just like, oh, they're talking. It would be rude to eavesdrop.
What have you done? Oh my god.
I was horrible at taking exams in school. It's basically itself an entire saga in my life.
I did end up teaching a little bit. I would teach 2 periods a day, because I was like an assistant teacher. So French 1 and French 2 were combined in the same period, which made teaching incredibly difficult. So I got hired on to take half of the students into a different room and do that lesson, so the actual like full-time French teacher could do her job well. But anyway, I got tired of 14-year-old boys throwing shoes at each other, so I decided that career was not for me.
I will only slightly make the joke, which is tip of my tongue, which is like, so you moved to the board game industry.
Yeah, men are not super more well behaved here. It's fine.
You're just taking shots across the bow.
But yeah, translation. This is something I started doing at Yellow because they're a French company, and the French house does a lot of in-house designs and whatnot. And when they want to bring them to the USA, it's helpful to have those in English. And so at that point, I had was months from living in France. Like, I'd just gotten back, was as fluent as I would ever be. And so I was talking to all my coworkers in French every day, and they gave me one of the Yellow mini games, which is their $15 white box, tiny game. So I started doing that, and then I did every game that was imported. So I have a BGG geek list that's very long of all the games I've worked on. After I left Yellow, there was a couple-year break where they tried other translators since I was no longer in-house. But I am working for them again, doing their rule books, and I also work for Repost, who do Just One, Seven Wonders, and a lot of other great games.
Yeah, I saw the credits for the new Seven Wonders version. It's very cool.
Yeah, I was very excited about that. I still am.
It's perfectly reasonable. I was laughing earlier because you were saying, it helps to have the games in English, and I was going to say, I'd imagine so, but then I remembered that me, with my enormous brain, I have bought several games in Japanese that do not have English rules. I do not speak or read any Japanese, and so I just am looking at them and I'm like, well, this looks nice.
Oh,
I'm just
yeah.
like, I really like the alignment chart chaotic dumbass, which is just like, it's more self-inflicty than other alignments, but I'm just like, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's on brand.
yeah, it's something. I have a game called Pass from the Night into the Day, which is like a game about walking alone right before the sun rises.
Oh, it's
I
beautiful.
have no idea how to play it. I don't even
Oh,
know how many people it plays at. I just have it. I paid money for it.
mm-hmm.
End of sentence.
Good decision. Oh, it
Yep.
sounds wonderful.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, no,
sounds
it's
like
it's
a
great.
poem.
I try to order a bunch of. I have some friends who import a bunch of games from Japan, so I'll occasionally get it on the orders. But last time I did that, they sent me this box of jellyfish-shaped paper clips.
Oh,
I was like, haha, delightful.
it's not a game. It's
Yep,
just cute.
yep, yeah, just a cute, just like sometimes they're like, oh, here's some cute stuff, and I'm like, neat.
I love it. Oh,
Yeah, nah,
so
I
good.
was super hyped. It's nice to have this kind of. I mean, y'all did like what slap bands for Totally Liquid, like people like the like aesthetic extras.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But actually, on the subject of that, Pandasaurus takes a fairly creative approach to marketing. Yeah, just thinking of some of the work I've heard about, seen on Twitter. The question I had was, what drives that, and what do y'all think about when you're trying to think about how to market a game specifically?
Um, One of our co-owners, Nathan,
Mhm.
he we have a rivalry. It's a very serious rivalry.
Right,
Um, Whenever I'm in meetings, sometimes in a meeting with Nathan, he'll take over our Twitter account and spoil things.
right.
So he's like the evil genius to some of our marketing plans.
Mhm.
The super creative ones, I will say, they start as like a Nathan thought, but at the point where the public sees them, they've been refined, so they're less like they're more functional
Mhm.
and a few degrees more reasonable.
Mhm.
Like the thing that we did on well, I don't know when this will air. The thing we did
Oh, this will
recently.
air on the first. It'll probably air on the 2nd of April. I generally don't
Okay,
post things
okay.
on the 1st of April specifically because then people think it's the gag. So you should just hold all content until the 2nd.
April 2 is my birthday. That's
Oh, hi.
perfect. Um anyway, so the thing we are doing recently for one of our October releases, this is way far out. Nathan's been teasing this game on Twitter, and he came to us. Oh, well, you know what? You already know all about it, but listeners, just go check our Twitter or our blog posts on our website. There's something called "The Universe is Ending. We Need Your Help," and it's very serious. We need your help instantly,
Mhm.
and we will weekly to till we figure out how to save the world. I
Right.
don't know how to talk about it without giving away the real fun bit of it, but you're
Mhm.
involved, so
Right.
uh,
I'll have more to
it's
say when it's my time in the sun.
mhm. But anyway, so that started off as a Nathan wild thought, and it took a few days of revisions until it became functional and something
Mhm.
that people would actually enjoy instead of crying about, frankly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's fair. No, that's fun. I mean, it's important to have that sort of like playfulness with your like brand as well, right? Being able to be a little bit flexible and not just everything is a press release. There's nothing wrong with press releases. They're often helpful. I have to draft a press release myself later for American Tabletop Awards related
Mhm.
awards. Ugh, I said American Tabletop Rewards like it was a Sam's card. I know what I'm doing. But yeah, I have to draft a press release later for that. But yeah, no, sometimes that's helpful, but having a little bit more fun with it is often, I think it resonates better with people.
Yeah, I mean, we're making board games, which are fun, so we should have fun
How
doing
dare
it.
you? How dare you have fun with board games?
Oh, so presumptuous. Um,
Well,
yeah,
that's fair.
I
You've
mean,
also had the challenge of like running some fairly massive Kickstarters, right? So like if you're not doing fun marketing there, it can be, I imagine, difficult to run things at that scale.
Well, yeah. Frankly, it's miserable if you don't have fun things for your backers to do, or just like fun content to show them that you can participate in, like what we did for Dino World. Like I got to play games with you and other wonderful people twice a week, which once I figured out how streaming works was a lot more fun.
I still don't know how streaming works, so I'm just like, I mean, I think my claim to fame is a stream in which my computer died 3 times, twice during the stream. Just be like, bloop, oh, hold on everyone, I'll be right back.
Oh no. You were great moral support though during my very first stream that is still on YouTube.
Oh yeah, oh man, my very first stream. I think my very first stream was just me like playing Slay the Spire and just talking to myself for like half an hour, and I'm like, yeah, it's fun. And I'm just like, weird. But oh man, so like if people are looking to kickstart their game, like what's the experience like of running some like fairly large Kickstarters, and like what would you say are important things to keep in mind for those folks?
So there's a ton of work that goes into your campaign before it even launches. Like you better have run numbers over and over and over again. I cannot tell you how to do that, but I know that is a vital step.
Step 1, run numbers.
Right. But you should have an idea of like what shipping will cost before you do anything, before you have a single backer. Know what the thing is going to cost you. And figure out what your break-even point is and what your like pie in the sky is, and have reasonable stretch goals. So you don't want to run out of stretch goals within the first hour of launching your campaign. It's bad. I would not recommend it. But we knew every stretch goal that we were going to, well, almost every stretch goal that we would reveal during the campaign. The reason we had to come up with some on the fly was because we ran out, which is not great because backers love momentum. It's a game for them,
right?
Because they're gamers themselves, so they're trying to min-max their value with their pledge, and the stretch goals that keep adding and increasing value for what they're getting. But it also makes them very needy. So, because they're giving you support, they're giving you monetary support, which in this day and age and country is very meaningful. But then they want they want to do things how they want to do them, which is not always reasonable. So be prepared to stand your ground and stick with your plan. Like, do not go off the walls and like listen to every single backer request, because most of them are not in the industry. Most of them don't work in games professionally, have never talked to a manufacturer, have no idea why things are done the way they are. So be prepared to defend yourself also with facts and photos and lots of words.
Yeah, that reminds me of some of my backer. My experience is mostly on the backer side, right? So like, I definitely remember the good old the days of salad and glory that were just like me just backing everything that I would like. I used to like refresh the Kickstarter page like every couple of days, but like, anything new that's exciting on here. And I bought a bunch of stuff, and I think only one thing ever. Like, I played one game, or I bought one game on Kickstarter. It was a game called All Fathomed Out. That guy definitely just took the money and ran. I actually saw a copy of the game in the BGG Con library a few years later. Like, apparently, it seems like he made 10 production copies, sent them to a few people, so the people would not get wise to the fact that he was just taking the money and running, and they took the rest of the money and ran. Or something. He hasn't commented on the Kickstarter in like 4 years. But like, I looked at it, I picked it up, I read the rules. It did not look very fun.
Silver lining.
Yeah, nothing of value. Well, I guess I lost like 20 or 30 bucks maybe. I don't remember.
Yeah. I mean, there'll be some backers who just pledge and don't say anything to you at all until they receive the game, which is great. But there are a lot of them who want to be involved, and like they want you to hold your hand and reassure them that everything is fine. And it's fine. You have to do that. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before about making the campaign fun. Because if it's a fun ride for you, you keep things light and breezy and exciting, there'll be people who just like retain that level of energy. And if you make them happy, they will make your job easier and reply to negative comments without you chiming in. So it's good. I think establishing a rapport and a sense of trust, accountability is key to having a not stressful, like just as fun as it can be campaign.
Right. No, that makes sense. I mean, that's kind of the key for a lot of relationships, right? Like the hat that I wear on the review side is typically I'm like, you should also try to have a few previews on your Kickstarter, because like if I see it's like it's a game, I've showed it to nobody, it might be good. I have definitely gotten some Kickstarter games that I love them, they're fun, they're busted. Like just like I've played some games that I've been like, do we read the rules wrong? Like I played a game that I got off Kickstarter that they actually had to release a patch, like an entirely new rule book with like different patched rules for the game. And they released it as a PDF. I'm like, I'm not downloading and printing a whole PDF. Do it look like I'm made of paper? And I was like, and like later I would realize that doesn't make any sense. I should have just done that. But like that extra step of getting the extra PDF, and I just never played the game again.
Oh no.
It happens, but yeah,
I mean,
you know.
I don't have a printer. It costs like $20 to print at FedEx. So.
Yeah, I bought a printer at the start of the pandemic because I was like, this sucks, but on the creator side, I need to occasionally print off shipping labels to like mail games along for publishers or for people who are sending me games. And so I need a printer for that, because some folks will give you weird side-eye if you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't own a printer. Now they're giving me a weird side-eye because I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I own a printer, but I'm on an ink subscription plan. I can only print 15 pages a month. So is it okay if I ask for an extra $1 to cover print costs? And they're like, are you nickel and diming me? And I'm like, kind of. It's not my fault. HP Instant makes it
a whole dollar, not just a nickel.
Yeah, it solves a lot of my problems. But anyway, speaking of publisher-creator relationships, I've asked a lot of people in the past about like the different stance that they have on publisher-creator relationships. I always find the response interesting. So I assume you work with many different creators in your work, both across the companies that you've worked for and your current role at Pandasaurus. But like, what do you tend to prioritize when you're looking for creators to work with? And then as a follow-up to that, what do you think is unique about Pandasaurus in particular that makes working with creators exciting?
This is my favorite part of the job. I have a lot of facets of my job, but this one is it's actually a double-sided coin, if that's the right phrase. Who knows?
Both ends of the carrot, yeah.
Yeah. So what I look for when finding new creators, or when I do waves of review copies, so like before release, at release, after release, there's a dozen or so copies that get sent to people. So when I'm trying to figure out how people fall into the waves and who among the vast number of content creators will get one of 12 games, there's a lot to consider. It's constantly like weighing so many aspects. So there's generally 3 things I look for, like vaguely, and then some of it is just like licking your finger, like holding up to the wind, like maybe this one. But I look for their online presence in the community they've fostered. Do they have a healthy, nice community? Like, are these people that we want to be playing our games? Like, because people will play games, they'll talk about games, I'll share their content. So like, do I want to be inside this bubble of people? Cool. Yeah, awesome. Let's do it. Reach numbers, they are somewhat important. That will help me figure out what wave people go into, because the initial wave, we want to be as big as possible to support the release. But even if you're a new creator, you have 100 followers, that doesn't discount you from being an additional wave, because I share all the content anyway. So if you have, well, this brings me to my third quality, which is my third aspect, which is quality. So if you have 100 followers, but you write beautifully, if I see in every review, you have something that's like, I want to paste it on the game box. Of course, I will send you a game, because I can put that on a website. I can use it on social media. Like, oh, chef's kiss. So good. So yeah, that's generally what I look for. And then what's more important, who fits each game best. Like, you and I have had a conversation with Umbrevia. Like, you couldn't play it unless it was digital. And at the time when I first asked you if you want a copy, it wasn't digital. So you're like, let's hold off, do second wave, whatever, like until you're moved. Totally reasonable. So yeah, being in different waves also doesn't discredit how much I enjoy working with a person too. It's just what's better for what's most mutually beneficial.
Yeah, and I appreciate that flexibility, right? Because it's like, especially around the move time, I had a bunch of reviews that I had blocked previously from like December that I was like, I'm writing to get everything. So even if we had been able to do it, I don't necessarily think I could have gotten the content posted until much later. So like a lot of publishers, I really appreciate that, the flexibility where they're like, oh yeah, we can get this to you later. It's not as big of a rush, like et cetera, as opposed to like some things are just going to be what they are, right? I have a couple Kickstarter games that I'm like, I need to have the Kickstarter like write up done before the campaign, right? You can't do a thing where you're like, it's 5 weeks after the campaign's ended, but my review is ready. That might be helpful, right? But it's sometimes more helpful around like fulfillment time.
Yeah. Well, that's something too. Like with the early copies, I get them 2 or 3 months before the actual release of the game, but I still am like, please don't post your content immediately. Like, I don't want it in a week. I would like it a month out from release, so like people can see it and pre-order it and do something. Like, if they just like read your review, they're like, cool, and then they can't get it for 2 more months, they'll likely not do the thing we want them to do.
Right, and that makes sense because it's like there's also that whole thing about like FOMO in the community and just like the idea of like if you have a game a year before it's published, I mean you're fine making content about it, but no one else is really. I've seen that people don't really engage with it as well because it's harder for them to get excited about something that's hard for them to access. This is something I run into a bit with some of the work that I do around like South Korea, like Taiwan and Japanese games, like games from that region. Since they're harder to actually get in the United States, I tend to get lower engagement on the content, not because the games themselves aren't interesting, but because people aren't as familiar with them because they're not popping up. And if they want to get something, like I reviewed a game called Monster Dentist a few weeks, maybe a week ago. Time is a flat circle. I don't remember. But you have little dental mirrors that you stick inside of like fake plastic monster mouth to like look at teeth. A lot of people were like, where can I get it? And I'm like, I don't know. And that's not a great answer to that question.
Right. And then also like people are following others, like they're engaged in the community to talk about the games they like and the experiences they have. So if they can't share in this experience yet, crickets, like there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah. Well, since we're on the subject of games anyways, I will ask you a fairly lazy question, but it is fun. So, of the Pandasaurus titles, I have to assume you have some favorites. And then I'll also ask, for the interest of balance, what would you say are your favorite non-Pandasaurus titles?
So, we already talked about Umbrevia, so I won't revisit that one. We've already talked about Brew, which are both really solid games. But the one that I kind of fangirled over before I even joined Pandasaurus, because I was part of the playtesting group, is Sonora.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Sonora is a flick and write. So it's got this dexterity or flicking disc element, but where the discs end up on the quadrant board will let you cross off things in a roll and write game with combos and bonuses and stuff. And it's wacky, thinky fun. It is everything I like in a game.
Oh yeah, Suzanne and I played it remotely,
Yeah.
which was wild. It does work though, right? Because if you have the overhead setups and you can mirror the setup both turns, I can just flick on my board and then my opponent just shuffles the stuff around to match it, and so it did work. We were both
Yeah.
pleased with how it turned out, but it was a lot of fun to just be like, yeah, we're just playing this like dexterity game remotely since we can both take our turns and just mimic the setups. No, I think Sonora has it's a very innovative little game. A lot of fun there.
I think it's pretty representative of the Pandasaurus brand too. Like it's got one of the most beautiful covers I've ever seen.
It
The
does.
artwork is just A plus. And then it's got something weird and cool and captivating in the gameplay. And I think there's those elements to varying degrees in each of our titles.
Have you seen the I think Button Shy just pushed out, this will be
Death
a little bit
Valley?
dated. Yeah, the Death Valley game that has a very like similar color scheme.
Yeah, yeah, with like the flat art style.
Yeah, that like purple and orange combo for deserts is just a very, very good combination color wise.
Yeah, I grew up in the Coachella Valley, so
Oh, okay.
surrounded by mountains. Like people, when I describe Southern California to people who'd never been there, I'm like, yeah, and the purple mountains. They're like, mountains aren't purple. I'm like, what other color would they be? What are you talking
Why
about?
did they call it Purple Mountain's Majesty?
I just, yeah,
You can't lie in songs.
but
That's
no,
probably
it makes
true.
me sad that people have never seen purple mountains, like the sunset. Oh, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, no kidding.
Good.
Okay, so what about your favorite non-Pandasaurus titles?
Oh, right. There are games other than Pandasaurus. Um, Caverna is in my top three forever and always. I started with Agricola. I love Agricola just fine, but I love not starving often in Caverna. And Caverna with the expansion that adds variable player powers, like you could be specifically dwarves or elves or different types of elves. That changes your gameplay. It's I will play it any day.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. No, man, I've never actually played it.
No?
Well, you gotta remember, I like for a long time I was just like, oh no, long games.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Caverna, I guess it's 2 hours.
Yeah, 2 hours
Actually,
is
don't
still
remember the
an
last
area that I
time,
would have been
but
skittish. But now that I've like
um,
played a lot of Millennium Blades and Spirit Island, I'm like, yeah, I can probably do it. It just needs to be the right people and the right time.
yeah, I think
There's
it's
definitely
pretty
a point where I
accessible
get
too.
tired and then I start dozing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And with Caverna, like each round you unveil, you flip over a new action, so
Mhm.
your choices become larger
Yeah,
too.
progressively larger. Yeah, that was one thing I always appreciated. I would game over at Netter's place, so back pre-pandemic, and there would just be times where I'd be like, I actually would like to not play anything for a bit. Is it okay if I just sit over here and write? And so I just like work on blog stuff and just like kind of be in the space. And that helped me like
Mhm.
recharge between games, especially for longer stuff. Like I tried like Manhattan Project Energy Empire. It was fun. I just needed like a minute afterwards to be like, and refresh.
Recently, I've hated. I'm a very bad listener. I have trouble processing information, and if I get distracted by something else, your words are
Mm-hmm.
gone. Like I
Mm-hmm.
did not understand them. So learning new games is difficult. It requires like immense focus on my
Mm-hmm.
end. Um, so I'm not interested or don't have any energy. Um, like I have the past 12 months, learning new games is even
Ooh,
harder.
yeah.
So we we set up on Mars. I had to watch Rodney's how to play video twice and then read the rules. And then we like set it up and went over things together. And I was like, you know what? I don't think I've got it in me to start. And we packed it up and played the next weekend.
Yep, that is extremely real. I was telling someone the other day, I was like, yeah, that's kind of the big problem with like board gaming right now is that like the things that are really tough for me are complex analytical tasks, learning new things, and like repetition. It's hard for me to just like repeat the same thing more than a couple times. And like, unfortunately, that's a lot of the things that I do when I'm playing a board game. I'm like, so board games have been tough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate.
Well, on the subject of putting it away without playing it, are there any games that you're looking forward to trying but you haven't been able to play yet?
Um, yes, I've had to think about this question fairly hard because um, I'm actually I put all of our games in a spreadsheet and we noted whether I'd played them or Dave had played them. So we're trying to play games that neither of us have played, so we can
Mm,
decide whether or not to keep it.
right.
Um, and so that's been mostly what I've been doing, and it's kind of homework. And we're almost at the end of the neither of us have played list. So they're games I've not really been looking forward to playing since they're at the end of the list. But I was able to think of two. One is I had it up already. Wonder Woman,
hmm
Challenge of the Amazons.
hmm
I'm a big Wonder Woman fan. My very first tattoo was Wonder Woman. Um,
Amazing.
this one has minis apparently.
hmm
That's about all I know. I don't know if you've played this one yet.
No, I haven't. I had yeah, just hadn't gotten a chance to.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I'm all about the lore and the characters, and I think I'll have a good time even if the gameplay is not fantastic. Though I have heard it is pretty good. So I
Yeah,
have hope.
Ravensburger's been having a really strong year for
Mm,
like IPs because they got Back to the Future, although I think a lot of places got
yeah.
Back to the Future, which good for them. They got Pusheen, which I was really hyped for.
Oh, that's
Um,
cute.
just and I assume that they've got more coming down the line.
Mm. Um, the other one I thought of was something that we talked about before the show started, which is the crew,
hmm
because it is on everyone's top 10 of 2020 list, and I want to know why.
Uh, I love trick-taking games. I will tell you that is why for me. I've been importing a bunch of. I blame Rand Lemley and James Nathan a lot for this, but I've been importing a lot of like Japanese trick-taking games.
Mm,
And the problem is, trick-taking games are so hard for new players to learn. They are wildly just like there's so many tiers of accessible layers that you have to cut through before you get to like I am ready to learn like complex trick-taking strategy. And so
hmm
a lot of people players feel alienated when they play. The crew flips that on its head quite nicely because it's actually more, in my opinion, more fun to play the crew with people who don't know how to play trick-taking games because they don't
Okay.
know what the correct strategies are supposed to be, and so that adds a fun little bit of like danger to it. So it's like, oh, I'm gonna play this 3, which is gonna cause you to play a 5, you to play a 7, you to play a 9. I've already seen this outcome, and then they play a 6. And you're like,
Excuse me.
what? What? Why would you? Because they forgot they had a 5 in their hand, and you're like,
Oh,
oh,
sure.
well now it's interesting. And so and like the thing is it's a tough like needle to thread there because you want to make sure that they don't feel bad, that you're not making them feel bad for not knowing how to play necessarily, but you're
Yeah,
also
yeah.
kind of like, oh, but this is actually really fun and exciting because it means that we can't rely on you to do the like how like Hanabi everyone's got their like weird thing and it's all a game of bullying
Sure.
players into doing what we've all agreed upon is the right thing. This is like that, but there aren't consequences for not knowing those things. So you're just kind of like, oh, we might lose. That's exciting. And so
But I like
once they
it.
get that though, they start to have to learn the complex strategy things. So they're like, okay,
Mhm.
I am going to do something weird. You need to collect green cards, you need to collect pink cards. I'm going to play every yellow card that I have in order to drain everyone's yellow cards. So that way, when you're collecting pink and blue cards, it's easier for you to do so because there's fewer cards overall. And like, there's a bunch of interesting like strategies that start forming. And watching trick taking click with somebody and being able to say, okay, I think that that's a really fun trick taking game. Let's try
Skull King, which is just mean, I guess, or Obero Ninja Star Trick, or a number of the other import titles that I've done. I have one that's like a trick-taking game about children's nightmares called Somnia, and I'm like, gonna find out what that's about. I have one about firefighting called Pompiers. Like, I really like trick-taking.
The first trick-taking game I played was Niet.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that one?
I'm not familiar with it.
It was a yellow title, so learned it for work, of course. But that one, you all, the rules change every round, and you play whatever number of rounds. But you draft the rules. So there's a rule board, and everyone has a set number of tokens. So you're covering up rules you don't want to play with that round until there's one left in each category. But it affects the points tricks are worth, or what the trump can be, or which direction, and like points could be negative, so that really flips things on their head.
Nice.
So that one's probably not a great trick-taking game for people new to trick-taking, unless you're ready to dive headfirst into like, oh, this is how it works.
Oh yeah, I love Skull King for that. Like, Skull King is just, it's brutal, but it's very fun. What other ones do I played a really interesting one a while ago called Spring Rally. It's a Mandu title out of South Korea. So it's a trick-taking racing game. So, yes, so the pitch is you play little wind-up cars. And you want to get to the finish line. So you put your wind-up car down, and you'll play tricks. Whenever you lose a trick, the winner of the trick advances that many spaces on the board with the card they play. The losers of the trick wind their car up by one. And so when you win a trick, it's not just that you advance that many spaces, but you also let go of your wind and you advance that many additional spaces. So you want to lose about 4 tricks in a row and then win on a really big trick to shoot like 20 spaces forward. But if you lose a 4th trick and you go into the 5th trick that you've lost, you overwind and you start losing additional distance. So it's this like weird game of balancing when you win tricks and when you lose tricks. It's pretty fun.
I like that. I like that a lot.
I like that trick-taking games are getting more complicated, more weird. That's my kind of area in particular. But I mean, you know me, I like theme a lot. But actually, thinking about theme, to pivot a bit and ask you purely as a person, not in your business role as a Pandasaurus employee, if you could adapt any like theme or like IP to be a board game, even one that's already been done, what would you go for?
I wish this question was asked on Twitter, and I had the perfect re-theme of Seven Wonders. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember describing what blue cards would have been themed as, and I do not remember. And it makes me so upset because it was perfect and it should happen. But the themes that I want more of are flowers. Mm-hmm. And like, when I was thinking about this question, I'm like, oh yeah, like the meaning behind flowers and bouquets. I'm like, oh dang, Tessie Mussy.
Yeah, it's okay. Like Tessie Mussy, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like,
somewhere Elizabeth Power Grace just like
got her. And I was like, well, I enjoy tattoos. It'd be nice to talk about tattoos. And I'm like, well, tattoo stories. Like, okay, cool. We're set there. And there's already a Wonder Woman game, multiple. So I think my interests are just about covered with all of those.
That's fair. I mean, that ain't bad. I'm trying to think now.
And now we have our Kipo game. So really,
Kipo's a fairly untapped thing. I'm hoping that if there's a market for that Dragon Prince game,
right?
Given especially, and this is just my personal gripe against many things, is that the Korra game is excellent. It's got I will freely say it's got a so-so rulebook. The rulebook is a little bit hard to learn, but it's a. Have you seen Korra?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's a pro bending game. So you just play as you play as a firebender, a waterbender, and an earthbender team, and you just pro bend as a deck builder. So it's a combat deck builder where you're fighting 2 teams against each other. I got the Kickstarter version, so they gave me far too much stuff. And like what you get is you get alternate teams. So you don't just get the fire ferrets and the wolf bats. You get like the armadillo moles and the buzzard wasps, and like you also get a whole thing where you can play cooperatively because Amon and his guys have broken into the entire like tournament area. But you also get like fantasy league play. And so they give you rules that allow you to basically mix and match teams. So you're like, I actually do want the guy from the Buzzard Wasps and one of the Armadillo Moles people and that guy from the Wolf Bats who was kind of a creep. I want them to be my pro bending team. But they'll even they'll give you advanced fantasy rules where you can play like they have 5 characters that you can play as. So they have Amon, who you can actually play as a pro bender, where basically he can still do pro bending, but he plays by himself. And if he charges up his ability enough, he can drain the bending from one of your opponent's benders, just remove them from play.
Oh.
And you're like, that's mean.
So thematic though. Oh.
Yeah, he's all violence. You've got Unalak, who can spirit drain rather than like energy bend. So what he does is you have to get you spend like key to buy cards. He can drain essentially your money. And you're like, no, I was going to spend that on cards. He just like drains it from you with some of his skills. They've got Pali, the combustion bender, who just, her attacks are unblockable. So like most of the time you can block like fire, water, or earth coming at you. If there's a combustion bend symbol in your place, you just need to get out of that zone. Like it's just, that's a nulled zone. My personal favorite they have is Kuvira. So they all have minis as well, which I'm delighted by. So like there's a Kuvira one. Kuvira is so good at metal bending and earth bending that the referee cannot tell if she's cheating. So there are cheats that you can use. They're like technique cards that are actually like you can cheat and get like flagged for cheating. With Kuvira, you are never cheating. Everything is legal. And you're just like,
oh my god.
But the final one, which is probably unfair, you can play as Avatar State Korra. And so she can it's you alone against a team of pro benders, but she can bend water, earth, and fire to her liking as much as she feels like. And so it's like it's such a cool game type because you can play like 1 versus 3, you can play 1 versus 1, you can mix and match them for like, oh, we're gonna play Avatar State Korra and 3 of our guys against Amon. Like it's a very like configurable game.
That's fun, especially as a fan of the show. Like you get to live the characters.
Yeah,
it sounds well done.
Yeah, it's hard for it to appeal to people who haven't seen the show because they're like, this is just a combat deck builder. And you're like, yeah, but like it's got elements. And they're like, why would it have elements? Like, well, it's a sports game. Why would they go through the trouble of making a sports game? You're like, it's confusing when you're asking me to explain it. Now that and more Penguin games. I'm just always here for more. Actually, I have one here. There's a WizKids title called Waddle Downtown, or it's just called Waddle. But
maybe the cutest thing I've seen recently.
Oh yeah, no, it's just all the penguins are loose on town. You just need to kind of get them places. It's very good. Oh, I love it. But yeah, so I'll ask you one more before I let you go, since I have taken up a lot of your time. But basically, the question I ask a lot of folks is, we've been in a pretty new space for a year at this point. And how has that changed how you're gaming? And what are some things you might carry forward once things once it starts to be safe to leave the house?
So I haven't left the house. I haven't seen people outside my house. I don't know. I don't know.
A very long time.
Fine. Yeah, it's been an amount of time. So I've been playing a lot of 2-player games, which was not unheard of before the pandemic, but it was definitely like, oh, no one was free. I guess we're stuck with each other.
Oh no, a person I like very much.
Like, oh, I live with you and I have to spend more time with you. Dang it. But now that's our default. Like, if it doesn't have a good 2-player mode, like, it's not getting played.
Right.
Have not done any solo gaming, but that's mostly because it would be me teaching myself a new game, and it's just not happening.
Actually, I don't get a lot of solo gaming done. I try to read the rules, and then I'm just like, or I could take a nap.
Yeah, because you have to learn it first, and then that sucks out all the joy. I do want to have like a microchip brain so I could just download, like BGD needs to make this their next feature. You could just
Right.
download the rules of your memory.
Me just like holding up my hands, being like, I can hear Rodney in my soul.
I want that.
Yeah, just like it's just you're like it's so pleasant.
Yeah. Instead of like meditative podcasts, you learn a rule book. That sounds so much better.
Mhm.
And then I've also been playing a lot of digital games. Not a lot, but definitely more than zero, which is what it was before the pandemic.
Oh yeah. No, before the pandemic, it was just me, blessed with foresight, being like, digital board games, that'll never catch on.
Oh, oh no.
Instead, I've just gotten really good at hucking my stuff in Tabletop Simulator and making other people's pieces too large.
Yes, now you're a menace. And
Although I did find very helpfly that a counter to that is if you play on a version of Tabletop Simulator that has like a 4-player mode, and you're only 2 players, you can select all the other players' stuff, shrink it down super small, and then just throw it off the table, and so it like appears back in the corner but very tiny, and it's no longer in your periphery. So
that's good. That's good. Using your skills for good.
yep, it's not galaxy brain; it's more like county brain, if that's fair. Like roughly that size, like municipality brain. You go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's the benefits like for Pandasaurus, but also for Danny has like proven itself.
Mhm.
So it'll probably keep happening once people can actually congregate and be in enclosed spaces safely
Yeah.
again.
The one thing that's been
It's just
really rough is
convenient.
like for a lot of IP games, especially for certain publishers, I have chatted with enough people that it seems to be the case that there's some like weird overlaps between like, are these digital board games? Is a digital board game a video game? Does our contract need to be altered if we're putting this like on them? So there are some games that are not accessible on Tabletop Simulator or Tabletopia because I guess the publisher doesn't have video game rights. They only have board game rights, and a digital board game is considered a video game. And I'm like, oh, that's a bummer. Yeah, it makes sense, but from a reviewer standpoint, I'm like, it's really hard for me to play this. It would be super chill if we had any digital version. And they're like, that's never happening. And I'm like, no, that's fair too.
Had to try.
Yeah. It's always worst case you ask, and they're just like, no, never. You're like, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that's how things have changed. It's not too terrible. It's just not what I would have expected, which I think is true for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, that's true. I played fewer games, but I got to really dive deep with some games that I liked, so it's been different. Yeah, but anyway, I don't want to take up too much more of your time since I've taken up a chunk of it already. But thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find you online?
Two places. You can either talk to any Pandasaurus on the internet, and it is very likely me, or you can talk to what is assuredly me on Twitter at Danni Loe, BEDANNIBELOW.
I like the idea though that there's like a midnight Pandasaurus where like you'll just like PM like they'll tweet at the Pandasaurus account and it'll just like tweet you back some Zalgo text at like 3 a.m. and you're like, that's not Danny, and you're like.
Well, no. So there's a Pandasaurus on Twitter that tweets about wrestling. That one's not me.
Oh, okay.
There's a Pandasaurus that tweets about board games and is not devious. That one is me. If it's wrestling, it's Nathan. If it's spoiling things, it's probably Nathan.
That's fair.
But
that's exactly what I would say before I went and shot a bunch of wrestling tweets. Figured you out.
Yeah.
Well,
my skeletons in my closet.
Just wrestling skeletons. It's probably a thing. But anyway, thanks so much for joining me. This has been a blast. So
fun.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll catch you next time. Thanks again.
Sounds good, Eric. Bye.
Well, that's all the time we have for you today. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Late Night Table Talk.